Okay, so we got the tones off recording, and we'll go ahead and mute everybody. So in case anybody's got stuff in the background, that does make a big difference, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so here we are. So thank you all for joining us, and also really thank you all for the ones who joined on to participate with us last week when I did the impromptu meditation to try to, calm down, send toward the storm and the people, and just to try to bring in a higher timeline. I mean, I really do think that when we do things like that, it absolutely makes a big difference. I mean, especially, I think for that one we actually had 8. So I mean, considering I sent out a last minute thing at 15 minutes till, and I mean that many people came on, that's a nice response. And 8's the infinite, so I thought it was quite perfect. I mean, definitely, I think numbers are representative of the energy of whatever it is we're creating, and I love 8s, and 12s and 13s, of course. I think we're up to 12 on this call. So if we get another one, that's at 13 again, magic 13. I don't know what that is. Well, I do. It's a Christic energy. So anyway, but I do think that, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people probably go into meditative states. I mean, out of 8 billion, that's not a huge number, but I mean, for every group you do have doing that. I do think we're changing the field. I think the morphogenetic field is coming to meet us, and I think when we stay deeply immersed in our hearts and transcendent of our own stuff, then we can really allow the magic of the field, the new field, to come in and really start to play with us. And of course, I mean, this is what Jude taught for years. But I mean, we're really living it. I mean, actually, we always have been. It's just that so many people weren't aware of it. But which kind of goes into this explanation for tonight's super full moon. This is, I think, the 3rd super moon of this particular year, but it's also the closest. This is the closest moon that we will have in 2024 to the planet, which of course means we feel it more. And if you haven't had a chance to read some of the astrological explanations that I'd sent with the email, you might want to check those out. There was one of them that I think Damascena Tanis, I think she's out of Greece. She was explaining the actual scientific parts about the way the moons work and when they're in an eclipse position. And she was explaining that this technically would be one of those rare times where you would have 3 eclipses, because that can happen. It has happened, but it's rare. But she said there was just some little thing off, which made it not technically a 3rd eclipse in this series, but because of the way everything was, we're still feeling the energy really of a 3rd eclipse. And I thought that was very interesting, considering that this is a super full moon in Aries. It's at 24 Aries, which is later degrees, but it's not, it's not like an anaretic degree, in the final parts of the sign or anything. But at a 24, it really reaches what I feel to be a maturity in our evolutionary process. And Aries, of course, is, starting new energies. It's the beginnings, the new beginnings. It's all these creations. And that's on the heels of the last 2 eclipses, which, were full moons are a lot of releases. So, when we had on the 17th of September, a lot of releasing. The last moon was a lot of releasing. And then Pluto stationed direct this last Friday, and that was a really big deal. That's a lot of energy. And I've talked about this, I think, for the last few weeks leading up to it. But anytime you have station that just a planet that sits there, there's just like this huge resonant frequency that's pounding out through the universe. I mean, imagine that if a whole planet stopped. And Pluto's a transformation. It's the big old bad Pluto, and it's meant to be like a wrecking ball in our lives. And a lot of times we think that something has to have action to be the wrecking ball, but in truth, Pluto just stationed and sitting there actually has more power because of its resonant frequency just beaming out through the cosmos. And so, and it's at that energetic degree of Capricorn, so it's really just, I'm not surprised we haven't had more earthquakes or seismic events and things like that. But, I mean, it really is giving that last final shake to anything within structures. And so it's no coincidence that this is right here before this election cycle in the United States. And I'm not going to focus on the election cycle per se, except to just, as we go in, really send just the highest potentiality for the highest timeline for humanity to go through, for people that identify as Americans per se in the country. First and foremost, though, I mean, I really think that it's important for us to shift out of country identities and out of identity with, towns and communities and whatever. I mean, sure, we're parts of those things, and they're parts of the stories, that we're participating in and creating on that local level. At the same time, I think it's more important really to step into our power as cosmic beings, as eternal beings. And once we do that, then we can always participate at any of these other sublevels in our highest capacities. So, when we actually, and I don't really want to make it an identity because we're giving up identity. I mean, as far as the old form of identity. At the same time, it's like if we see ourselves as cosmic, if we see ourselves as presence, as powerful creators in imagining a brand new world without all of the other history, then we see ourselves something as beyond an American. We see ourselves as cosmic awareness, and that's really, I mean, if you can imagine all 8 billion people on the planet seeing themselves as a cosmic awareness, what would that look like? And I mean, if that were the case, if everyone else gave up all the small identities, there wouldn't be this constant perception of the separation, because you would never wish anything on anyone else that you wouldn't wish for yourself. And I think that's one of the biggest places where people miss the mark a bit, because we get so consumed with what's going on, in our day-to-day lives, and we miss the bigger picture. But I do think if we hold the highest potentiality for the highest timeline, then whatever's happening in the field, whether it be political arenas in this country and every other country, we're really allowing the highest potential for peace, for harmony, for a release of drama, a release of the old stories, the victim consciousness. I mean, we're letting all that go. And so once we do it, the external world, of course, has to mirror who we are. And that really is where we take our power. And it's where we not necessarily wield the power, but just by becoming, that's power. And that's really the complete antithesis of what we're taught to be power. That's not the way the political structures work. It's not the way most business works. Everything is, you've got to touch this, you've got to move this, you've got to control this, manipulate this. I mean, that's the old paradigm of power. So, okay, so this takes me to one of the parts. I was starting to mention this when we were talking. LaDonna brought up about. I don't remember what we was talking about, but so where I was going to go, mythology. So one of the things that Spirit's kind of been talking with me this week on, I mean, I've had an awareness of this for the last 2-3 years, I guess. But as we go in, if you look at the world through mythology, that's just astrology first. If you look at the astrological understandings of what people have explained are happening, those are overall energies that we share as a collective, because they perceive that the planets, whether they're in conjunctions or trines or sextiles, all those are the energies of the aspects, the way that it affects us. Now, all of those different things have had a value projected onto them by astrologers and different people in the field over the years. The values come from the mythology that has been written for, eons of time. And sometimes you wonder where the mythology came from. Obviously, if we look at our existence as humanity, the different versions of Bibles or religious teachings would go back to say, there was a creation story of some sort, and you had Adam and Eve. Who knows? But at some point, life just became. And if you really go beyond all of that, then you'd realize that the carbon atoms come together and started forming actual organic material. The organic material continued to move and advance, and it continues to happen to this day. I mean, people sit there and their jobs are to go out into the oceans and into the mountains and really, really look at the atomic levels of the way that something is shifting and morphing and changing to the environment. Animals do this, plants do this. Almost any matter will shift and change based on the environment. So if that's the case, what do you think would happen if people started projecting into the field belief systems and projected values, which would be the mythology? You had giant beings, whoever they were, wherever they come from, and a lot of this is given over to Greek mythology, the Roman mythology. Of course, you've got the Egyptian. You have all the different civilizations that shifted and adapted it based on their understanding of the planets and how the planets worked with them. But almost all of them agree that there were larger beings that were here. We could go way down a rabbit hole and be like ancient aliens and talk about, the Anunnaki or, the groups out on Easter Island, the Incas, any of the different groups. But what is it at the core that allowed us as human beings to progress through all these years, through centuries? This is centuries, it's millennia. And we have our understanding of ourselves, but we also project value onto our understanding onto people around us. Okay, so take that and imagine that someone read your astrological chart and they'll say, oh, so-and-so squaring this or trining this, and you probably had this happen around this year and this happened around this year, and they give you an overall loose structure of things that have happened in your life. And then from those types of things, they will explain to you the life lessons you came here to learn. And I think all of those are pretty good and tight in there. and it's one reason why astrology has stayed around for thousands of years. I mean, there's a reason for it. But Spirit, was asking me, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? So once you start to become aware of things in your own life, and let's say you go and you have an astrological reading with someone, and they explain bigger cycles of your life. Do you have a better awareness of who you are because they're projecting a value onto you based on the old mythology? Or are you in a place where you go into self-reflection and say, what is it really here that this is trying to tell me or teach me? If it's a lesson, let's say with a love interest, a spouse, it could be kids, grandkids, whatever. There's all these different levels and layers of our experience that have happened to us over our lifetimes, but also many lifetimes when you look at the larger picture. And so part of you may be wondering why I'm going through this whole big long thing, but there's a value here that I think we're being invited to look at to make a huge jump. What would happen if we're no longer the mythology? And I go here on purpose, and I think it's perfect timing with all this, with this Aries full moon. Full moons are about release. And so if Aries is new beginnings and this is eclipse type energy, imagine that we are eclipsing huge levels of belief systems that we've carried for all these lifetimes. And what if the mythology that's been projected onto humanity for thousands of years, what if it's false? What if it never existed? There's so much of our world that really never existed. Something only exists because there's collective agreement that it exists in our world. Now, take that and imagine the power of belief system. For many of you that have heard of Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, different ones that were writing in the times of 2012, Barbara Hand Clow, all the people that were, understanding of the Mayan calendar. So the Maya. We had all that Maya fall away in 2012. Everyone thought there was going to be a huge shift, and there was a huge shift, but it's like when you're in the shift, you can't see the shift. You can't see the forest for the trees. And so here we are, literally 12 years after the Mayan calendar, and next year in 2025 will be 13 years. And again, there's something very significant about 13, and I think that's why it's being presented to me. But I do think we've had this 13-year cycle from the last of the Mayan calendar. Of course, it's only 12 years this December, but into next year will be the 13th year. So I believe it begins after this winter solstice, really. What I think we're being asked to do is go to the next level of releasing so much of the false reality, the belief systems that we are controlled by mythology, the false concepts of the old illusion, which is falling away, and I'm not saying that it hasn't really existed, because we've all lived our lives. We all played out these parts in our lives with our families and our friends. I mean, we've played out the archetypes, and whether it's the hero archetype, the victim archetype, the mother, the father. We've played out all of these things for so long. And if you look at the levels and layers of the distortion, Spirit's been really taking me into the vastness of distortion and how that has played out through just an unlimited number of ways, depending on the individual and the circumstances we've grown up into, whether it's the countries that we're in, languages that we speak, the social customs that different people are born into. If you really look at the vastness of the human experience on the planet, it's really mind-blowing to really look at all of the different types of experiences that we've gone through, and imagine that when you listen to some of these astrologers, they talk about the core of the energy and how we are either consciously or unconsciously allowing the energies to work with us and make things conscious. And as we continually go into this next jump, and it's huge. The April eclipse of the 8th and the March 25th eclipse opened this really wide open for us. This is a culmination eclipse series that we're in. Well, actually, no, it ends next March. That's when we move into the next. The nodes, the moon's nodes move into out of Aries and Libra, and they move into Pisces and Virgo. And that's really going to change who we are as what we're working with our identity. It's going to take us into Pisces, which is deeply, it's oceanic presence. It's our emotional body, individually and collectively. And Virgo it's that virgin. It's that a total reigniting of who we are back to pristine awareness. And I don't think that's by mistake. And especially when we've done all this work the last 18 months back to July of last year, when the moon's nodes moved into Aries and Libra. And of course, to remind you of what that is, Aries, the I am presence, the me, as opposed to Libra, which is the balance, the other, whoever the other is. And we've had a very long exercise in that. And that's not done actually until I think January is when the nodes change. But the point is that we've had this whole big shift of releasing so many things deep in our core. And I know a lot of people may listen to this and say, well, God, what would it mean to give up mythology? I mean, we've carried mythology around as an identity or as part of our function as humans for centuries or millennia. What would it be like? What would it be like to give up archetype? There are so many archetypes that have been put into the field, and psychologists and psychotherapists have used archetypes and the meanings of those to try to gain understanding for their clients over the years. But what happens if you get stuck on an archetype? If we're constantly identifying with something that is only one aspect of who we are, does it not keep us stuck? It's one reason that psychotherapists and psychologists build their practice. It's the same thing as Western medicine. They're building a practice. If all you're doing is keeping a client on the hook, a patient that keeps coming back to you, you're not making them well. And I think this is the next level of awareness that we're being invited to go into. It's not necessarily the physical health we're addressing. We're addressing the totality of who we are as an existence. And I know that sounds like a big framework of terminology and words, but it really is what we're invited to do, because we're changing the very way we perceive ourselves. And it's almost like we're all at the end of a cliff and we're invited to jump off into the ocean. Or possibly not even into the ocean. What if we could jump off the cliff and we fly? I mean, obviously this is metaphorically, you know, um, being presented. It's not something where we're going to literally fly, unless, of course, we're going to levitate off of a cliff. But what would that be like to just fly out and into the field? What if we're lightening up so much that we give up all of that density and we were to become that light? I don't know. What would that look like? Can we release so much baggage that we've carried, the emotional baggage, the angers unprocessed, all the emotional stuff? Can we feel so light that there's not another person, place, or planet, or an idea, or a thing on the planet that would actually bring us down? And of course, that means turning off the news. It doesn't mean we have to be in ignorance of what's going on in the world around us. It does mean that we no longer identify with the distorted reality that's still playing out. Sure, there's a lot of suffering. There's all sorts of trauma. Those things will continue until those individuals are able to go in and go through their own hero's journey, their own deep levels of clearing. And of course, we've still got hurricanes and this and that are going to happen. And people will find themselves there. And it's really true that everyone's always where they're supposed to be. If a soul finds themselves in Asheville, North Carolina with no water, and I mean, they are getting services back. I mean, a huge water main was replaced recently, and a lot of people are getting power back. That their lives certainly have gone through and just been scraped to the bare core, for the people that are there. And that's exactly what those particular souls chose to experience in this particular time. It's the same reason for all of us that were in New Orleans and Katrina or on the Gulf Coast when Katrina came in. Many of us had family or friends or personally went through just such a core. It almost felt just like a rape, where something, an energy came in and just took us to our raw core. I mean, we had to clean out our houses. We had to just strip it all down to the very bones and start from scratch. Many people. I didn't have to do that. I mean, I don't know how. I was one of the 20% in New Orleans that didn't flood. I mean, my house, got outside stuff, but nothing inside. I didn't have to go through that. My soul didn't. I just had it set up where I didn't have to do it. Lots of family and friends did, and again, I mean, part of that is to really, I think, take us into what's important. And so many people get stuck around the material reality. And what happens when the material reality is just washed away from us? It leaves us with ourselves. And it's what drives most people insane. It's one reason why, when we had the Great Depression in the 20s and 30s, when all that money went away, you had so many people kill themselves because their identity was completely around the material world. And of course, back then there was so much more density within the collective consciousness. So I went into all of that, I guess, for this reason, is for each of us, I think we're all invited. I mean, and whoever listens to this call at a different time, who are you beyond this particular moment when you're really trying to make a quantum jump? I think we're invited to give up the rest of the way that we allow the material world to have a hold on us. It doesn't mean that we don't have things in our material world, but there has to be, I think, a core shift in our relationship to the material world. The material world is something that comes after we go through an internal shift. it's one reason I think that so many people that make it in the world of fame, either musicians, actors, actresses, what have you, in that false reality, it's one of the reasons why they walk away from huge mansions they build for themselves. I mean, I constantly see the internet flooded with, oh, this was Mary J. Blige's house or Barbara Mandrell's house. There's these huge mega mansions these people build, and they just walk away. I mean, they're still full of stuff. There's all these things. What would make a person walk away from a huge material creation, something they thought was going to be so important that they wanted so much, and it's just abandoned? Part of it is the energy that created that material world. And I've touched on this before, but there's something where within the progression of the soul, if we are creating our material wealth, our external world, from anything that's not in its highest potentiality, if we're making money at the expense of someone else, either their physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health, mental, in any of those forms, I feel like it's a lower creation. Now, if you are creating reality by assisting others, by constantly being in a collaborative effort in the highest potentiality of your own soul and spirit, and you're working to that end with everything else in the world around you, I feel like what we bring into our lives is much more in balance. And so there's not like this big, like cosmic, cliff we're going to fall off of, because it's like building a glass house around us, and people, talk about falling into a glass house. It's kind of that type of thing. It's like how pure is the energy of creation that you're working with in your life? And I feel like this has kind of gone a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit there, and yet I still feel like I'm being guided to articulate, what this is. But it's really to show you the vastness of, and also for each of us to reflect on how we create our reality, what we've created in the past, and how do we, from this particular moment forward, go into the highest creation with the least amount of density and miscreation and distortion with our creations. I think that's really the core of where we're going with this. And so, there's been a lot of death. That's one thing that's been talked about. I mean, I had a cousin, not even 50 years old, that died last week on the Pluto station. And I think that was one reason that there was a lot of death. Anytime you have that, that's usually going to lead to a lot of death and destruction and things. But it's like, it really is taking people into a place where if it's a choice point. And again, this is, for each of us individually, but also with family and friends. If a relationship is not working anymore, this is the time. This is when you take your power. If you do not feel like you are in the place where you're supposed to be, if there's anything that's been pulling at you, this is the moment where you say, I want to make this change. If you're not completely just immersed in your soul work, whatever that soul work is. It can just be a basic job. It can be taking care of kids, grandkids. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. If you don't feel like that you are participating in your highest potentiality of your soul at this particular point, your higher soul and the spirit is going to come in, and I feel like we're going to all be shown what to do. It's like anything that we're out of alignment in is going to come up. And that's why I articulated, what I wrote about this is a very tricky and challenging time. It does not have to be a bad thing. It just means that we're going into much deeper levels of refinement in how we participate in life, but also how we attend ourselves and continue to go in personal transformation. And so the next part of that, of course, would be, Neptune's at the end of Pisces, the end of the dream. These are long transits, and this is going to be playing out through, again, 2026. Saturn is the same thing. But as I was looking at my own chart today, Saturn and Pisces are going to go, Saturn and Neptune are going to go back and forth between, they're both in Pisces now, but they're going to go into Aries, and they're going to go back and forth in retrogrades for the next couple of years. And I was like, God, what is that going to look like? Because as a general rule, when it's working in a sign, it puts us in a place where we're either working with certain emotions, certain feelings, certain dynamics. But this, between Pisces and Aries, Pisces is the end of the zodiac. It's the end of an old world. Aries is the beginning of a new world. Aries is the initiation. It's the new. It's the all that new energy. Pisces is the old energy. If these are major signs, and they're retrograding back and forth and coming back and going in forward motion between the end of an old world into the new world. Neptune's the dream. It represents the oceans. It represents the water. This is one thing Pam Gregory talks about. I'm sure y'all have heard about me talk about her before. She's a UK astrologer. I think she's in her 70s. She's gone through all sorts of awakening experiences and things. But she talks about how so many people are talking about this next part is going to have to do with water. And our collective consciousness is shifting because, we are so much water. The planet is, 70% water. We're 70% water. The images of water, the way that our cellular structure is changing from the water, and all the solar activities coming in. We are literally going through monumental changes on that atomic and subatomic level. And so as it changes us at that core, that by its very definition is also changing the way we perceive ourselves. And so, anyway, it's a big deal what we're doing. And again, it's not something to fear. So if you may have family or friends that their lives are imploding on themselves. If they're deeply immersed in heavy density, in other words, if they're in a place where their soul contracts came in a lot of stuff that they have to transmute, a lot of energy that that they really came to deal with, and for some people that will be the case. And you can certainly be there and assist them, but you can't. There's no more fixing anyone, and you also really ought to be in a place where you're not going to take on someone else's stuff. People have to shoulder their own stuff. You can obviously assist, but we're really being invited to attend ourselves and then assist others as you can. So, and I do think that we're going through. Spirit calls us it's like a deep purification process, and so it's and that's unique for every person. Absolutely unique for every person. But this Pluto, that's the transformation. So I think between now and the end of the year, whatever you can do to simplify your life is really going to serve you really well. That's one thing I'm doing. I'm going through in the material world, just trying to clear as much as I can energetically, and it just amazes me how much I've taken on through genetic inheritance and ancestral inheritance that but also the material. But it's like there's so much that just weighs us down that we don't realize. So release anything you can in the material world, release anything, unprocessed emotions, angers, resentments, whatever it is. I think most of y'all are in a pretty good place. And if you still have pain, if there's a certain amount, because each of you, of course, are in a unique place with where you are. Anna, I know, you've mentioned different times. I think you're one of the older ones here, but the older people have carried so many different lifetimes, and so there's places in the pain body where we build those things up. And I mean, I think most of the callers now are like over 50 for sure. Well, actually, maybe some 40s in here. But I mean, most of you are in a place where you've gone through a deeper progression of the soul, and some of you may have done that in youth as well. But we're at a place where some of you still have different levels of pain body that you're carrying, and depending on if you had worked with Jude for any amount of time, I'm sure she probably went into it with you about how the pain body got created, the places where you're still holding some places in there, that still need some release. And some of those things are in this lifetime. They're going to be in other lifetimes. Again, this is a multi-dimensional event, the pain body. And if you are still experiencing pain in this time, that's one of the things we're going to go in and really try to clear with this meditation tonight, is to release as much of the pain body as we can. And many of you may not have any perception of pain in the physical body at all. Some of you may have emotional discomforts. Some people perceive that as pain. Some people just perceive it as just a sadness or like a depression, whatever. I mean, it can play out in different ways. But these are all places that we are invited to go into with this moon series to really scrape that mayonnaise jar out of our lives. I mean, literally, go into the deepest zero point. I mean, I've talked about this so many times too. And we really did open up that 0 point between those last eclipses in March and April. So we've had 6 months to work on these things. This particular eclipse series was a culmination of those. And now between this series and the next series, which is another 6 months, we're really going to be just in a continual transformation and shift and release, allowing the new life to come in. So, okay, I think I've explained that pretty much as in-depth as I can. I hope I wasn't too overly explanatory with all of that, but I don't know. I go where Spirit takes me with these things. So, obviously, there's either at least one or two people on here that need that depth of explanation. Maybe I'm the one that needed the depth of explanation. It may have just been coming from me, and all of you are in a good place. But obviously, I mean, nothing comes forth, without a collective soul agreement. And if for anybody that listens to this later, they'll be listening to it because they've been brought to it. Everything happens. We hear something, exact timing, and not everything's for us. For anything that's not for you, discard it and put it in the trash. So, one thing that I have noticed for myself, I have a palpable awareness of how the field has shifted, just for myself. When I wake up in the mornings, there's not as much density as far as like with any unprocessed emotion stuff. I mean, I feel lighter in that way. I also feel like when I'm waking up that I am in a much deeper level of not necessarily joy, but there's an ecstatic state. We really are coming into a more unified electrical frequency. Let me call it that. I've done a lot of work over the last. This has been a 20-year journey for me. But when I went through all the Rolfing with John DeMai, I did a whole series, the regular series of the 10 plus an extra 3. But I also went back to him for the more SE work, the somatic emotive work, and I did this for like 5 or 6 years. So he was really able to really break open all the myofascial in my body and release a lot of stuff. And when he did that, it allowed for such a deep electrical connectivity between my brain and the heart center and all of the different parts of the body where the electrical impulses and that connectivity goes and fills in. Then with craniosacral work with Elise, that really aligned the brain potentiality to go in and perceive all the new electrical impulses that had been reignited a lot more. Then the work with Jude and the deep meditation just took me deeper and deeper into where all I had was more awareness. So, and again, this is part of, I've talked about the separation between us and others. There's no separation between us and anything on the planet. But this is an internal separation. What happened for me was that any place within myself that I didn't feel like I could perceive, like my foot with my arm and like have an awareness of the totality of my body all at one time. And I think this is where a lot of us get, stuck. And we'll have a part in our body that doesn't feel good, or that we've got an unprocessed anger, emotion, whatever it is, an energy blockage. And so sometimes we'll go and have that done with acupuncture. You can have massage therapy done, Feldenkrais work. There's all sorts of different modalities. It doesn't matter the modality. The point is that you go and you do some clearing and healing with someone else. But I had done so much of that I really have reached a place where, and some of the people talk about the body electric, and it really is true because we are electrical beings. There's been so much solar flare activity hit us that it's activating the very core of our electrical impulses and the way our body perceives those. And so if you're deeply immersed in your heart, you're going to be feeling a lot of, like, it's like you have a complete awareness of your body all at one time. It's like the chakra systems are all lined up, all the myofascial tissue. You've got all this electricity current that's running all the way through your body. And we really are going into that next level of deep awareness and using that electricity, all the electrical connectivity with all the adamantine particles to really start to create with that. And I think it's taking us into that next level of what does that look like. And I've mentioned in other calls of having the experience of just going into the oneness, but now we're being invited to be in that oneness with our unified consciousness between the heart and the mind, and actually going into the next level of manifestation in the outer world. So, and that's, I really feel like we're a work in progress for this, but it really is the more natural state of who we are. So we're raising our vibrational frequency, which raises the electrical impulses. all the adamantine particles come in, and that with the field, which is around us. I clicked on the wrong thing here. When we go into that level of awareness personally, but we also have the cosmic elements line up with planets and everything else, is like we're all coming into divine flow, and we're also coming into divine creation. We've talked about divine creation a lot. I mean, Judith's talked about it for my last 20 years. But we really are in that place where we're stepping into it, I think, more collectively. And not everybody, I think, is obviously going to be creating in that way. But the field itself, the morphogenetic field, has shifted enough where I think that everyone has the potentiality to create with it if they want. It's like, but you really have to get out of your own way. It's like you're sitting and listening grace, and you're allowing Spirit to come in and be with you, but also move through you. And again, I mean, this can happen in any shape, form, or fashion. It can happen for people that are going and cleaning up North Carolina or Florida. I mean, for every person, it's going to happen in a very unique way. And at the end of the day, it comes into service. You're either assisting in service of others, and it can be from catastrophic events, but it can be just, again, taking care of parents, grandparents, kids, community events, whatever it is. But it can also, it can just be presence. I mean, when we come in and we do meditation to go in and clear something that's happening in the field, like a big hurricane come in, that is, I think, one of the most powerful ways that we're taking our power now with divine presence is assisting and shifting timelines. And so, again, we live in an infinite universe. But the more we go into the higher levels of creation, I think we're going to be met more fully and completely. And it's going to allow for a continued acceleration of the progression of our own souls. And so, okay. I think on that note, I think I've covered everything that Spirit was going to, present. I know that's a lot, and I hope I haven't overloaded you. It's been almost an hour. So here's the chime of my clock. So perfect timing. So we'll let this chime take us into the meditation, going into deep clearing, and take us into new levels of creativity and supporting each other. With these quantum shifts that are coming in with this moon. I forget what time the moon happened, but I think it's already happened. I think it was earlier today. It might be this evening. I just don't remember. I can't hold anything in my mind anymore. So anyway, okay, so let's go ahead and, if you haven't gotten still, imagine most people have already been chilling out with this, but and again, this has gone longer than I imagined it would. I didn't mean to talk for almost an hour, but here we are. So, one thing that's happened, though, because we've done this so regularly, we're able to, I think you've probably noticed that you can go into a much deeper, relaxed state much faster than we ever used to. Everything's immediate. And that's one thing I was explaining, like when I wake up, it's just immediate. I just lay there and I let Spirit go in and just really take me in. So that's what I think we're going to be doing now. So, okay. So just let your body just get really still. Do any deep breathing if that is something that works for you. And we're just going to let Mother, Father, God, and the entire company of heaven and spirit, and the entire archangelic presence, all the elemental kingdoms, the mighty Elohim, the builders of form. If you have something where you still feel like you have some deep clearing and healing, invite Saint Germain and the Violet Flame to come in and do transmutation work. And of course, the Diamond Price Light and the 12th Golden Ray to just radiate. And we're just going to go in and allow the sun and the great central sun and the great central sun and so on and so forth to come in and just purify the totality of who we are. And there's that magical number, 13 attendees. Can't make this stuff up. So if you're carrying anything within your heart and your soul that still feels like it's almost impossible to get rid of, go in and feel into that and just turn that over to God. This is how we consciously work with any given moment of time within our lives. And they always say when two or more are gathered, well, there's a magical number right now. So what if that makes it more potent? What if that makes it just a perfectly magical time for all of us to assist each other in transmuting any and all old stagnant energy of who we are and stepping into our highest potentiality? Because it's definitely something we're doing as we have created this community or continued the creation, of course, from when Jude started this up years and years ago. For some of you, you may feel the electricity within your skin. You'll feel the electricity, that buzzing feeling. You may feel it in your bones. You may feel it in your heart. You may feel it and the organs, and your feet, and your hands and arms and legs, and in your head, your brain may be buzzing. A lot of that is the electrical connectivity. We live in an electrical world, but it's also quantum. It's all immediate. And again, for any of you that are perceiving deep pain, possibly you may have arthritic pain, you may have just soul pain. Perhaps your emotional body is still carrying so much from your family stories or other perceived hurts or anguish. Perhaps you have other physical ailments. Go and place your awareness wherever that pain is. And start to co-create with laser-like precision by going in and placing your awareness where that is. As we amplify this meditational field, the entire company of heaven is coming in here to assist us in the amplification. So you're not doing it alone. None of us are doing it alone. This is one of the things we came here to remember is the more people that we can have going into a collective awareness, the more we can shift the entire world around us. And we shift it for each person in the group. But we also shift it for the field around us that we're perceiving. The external world of form has to come meet us where we are. So let this pristine, immaculate awareness permeate your heart center. You can feel the waves emanate out from your heart center and through your body. There's that, it's a very soft undulation. It's like a ripple in the water that just flows out. Imagine that whatever it is that you're carrying is just being taken away by the ocean, the oceanic presence. So, who are you beyond all of the archetypes? All of those different projections onto us. Certain aspects of our human selves that we've been identifying with. What happens when you release any and all archetypes? It's like we release the archetype, and yet we're still, as an aspect of presence, as an aspect of God, we still have the capacity to be an aspect of presence as God needs us to be in any shape, form, or fashion. Because we no longer identify with any of the archetypes or with any of the distorted thought forms of who we used to be. If you ever question, what is a distortion? Just go in and ask Spirit to sit with you and guide you and give you a perception of what distortion is. There's so many things that happen in the external world of form right now in our world that are distortion. What if you were to consciously ask for Spirit, Saint Germain and the Violet Flame, to transmute and transcend any and all distortion and all of the miscreations throughout this particular lifetime and any and all lifetimes throughout your entire existence? What would that look like? What if you were that powerful? We are collectively moving so much. I've yawned so much tonight. Jude used to say when she would yawn that there was so much deep releasing going on. feel into your body. Feel your entire body going into collapse. Physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Going into absolute disintegration. Not falling apart in some awful destructive way, but disintegrating anything that is not an outward manifestation of your highest potentiality. As we allow for the disintegration, let's also ask that Spirit brings us back into complete integration. If there's any part of our soul and spirit that has gone through splinterization over our many lifetimes of existence, if there's any part of that soul, of our souls, that are floating out anywhere in the time-space continuum, in any of this universe and other sun-daughter universes, so on and so forth, let us ask for complete soul retrieval. Let us do a request that we come back into total completion with every micron of our being that's ever been in this lifetime and every others. You may have bizarre imagery of some image of yourself coming in, or someone that may not even look like you, but it feels like you. Some of that can be the soul integration of parts of yourself that had gotten so splintered off, and yet they're coming back now for reintegration. And again, if there's any place where your mind still attempts to wander to, go sit with that and just ask that the mind be released of anything that it no longer needs to hold and carry. If there's any place where you still feel like that you're supposed to do something for someone else, let that go. Let it go back to 0 point. It doesn't mean that when you're out and about in the moment that you won't be led to assist someone else. But truly let that be in the moment. Let yourself go of any preconceived notion of how you think you need to help another person. Just be in the moment. The intensity of this cosmic awareness is coming in exponentially compared to what we've been used to having. There's so many solar flares, there's so much solar activity, there's so much release of adamantine particles, there's so much shifting in the morphogenetic field. It is exponentially expanding beyond anything that we've experienced in our lifetimes. As we expand, it has to expand. As we continually give up old, outdated thought forms, it makes way for the new to come in. If you can refrain from what that looks like, you allow for Spirit to gift you with a much higher potentiality. Have you noticed how so much time is collapsing, even while we're in this meditation? I was here a moment ago and it feels like 5 or 10 minutes ago, and yet no time has passed. This is the nothing. This is the Alpha and Omega. This is pure presence. It is this that is assisting you in releasing your pain body. Your pain body cannot exist in this space. We are each and every one stepping back into, actually not even stepping, we're just becoming, re-remembering our wholeness of the totality of who we are. No matter what's happening in your life, see yourself as complete and as whole. You have everything that you ever need at any given moment of time. Everything other than that is an illusion. Okay, everyone, you're invited to stay in this space as long as you can, to continue to allow these frequencies to continually activate the memory of your cellular structure, to be in a healed space. Thank you all so much for attending again. And I hope that this has done what it's needed to do to heal you for where you are in the progression of your soul at this particular moment of time. So happy Aries full moon, super moon. And let us just send the highest amount of peace and love and comfort out into the external world of form all across the planet, but especially to those places that have been either war-torn or hurt by weather phenomena or other some sort of circumstance. and of course all the regular miscreated and distorted thought forms that are continually projected out into the field onto other humans. May we all continue to go into the highest potentiality of our timelines to create from the highest amount of grace possible. Eternal love and infinite blessings to all of you.